Let's follow that talk with a poolside chat on space design. Welcoming the host, Ms. Geetanjali Kasliwal, and the guests, Mr. Arpan Dalal and Mr. Krishnendu Menon.
Thanks, Sudhir, and the Pool Design, Indie Design team for inviting me here and having the opportunity to meet and hear so many stalwarts I can identify. So we'll begin the session. We have, I see here two very varied studios, but they do seem to have a stream of commonality. So Krishnendu and Arpan, tell us about your design journey, about your journey, how you landed into architecture.
Yeah, so we started off as a multinational company actually, and it was a great experience overall, as in how we transformed into our own company. So we started off as a multinational company, and then we sort of bought ourselves off from that company to make our own studio, and so we have a 120 strong office in Ahmedabad. Multidiscipline office with interior designers, urban designers, landscape architects, and so it's sort of a really motivational young crowd of people. We have offices in Ahmedabad, Pune, and Mumbai.
You seem to be really young, so when did you join Indie Designs?
So yeah, I mean, I joined INI in 2010. It's been 6.5 years, 7 years actually. I moved to Pune in 2016. So we have a range of projects, all from healthcare till residential, museums, labs. So we have a range of projects. There are many project managers sort of dealing with different projects. We handle teams. So it's a lot of teamwork. We are fortunate to have directors who really experienced. So it's almost like working in a big firm, like the kind of stuff you see in overseas.
Yeah. What about you, Krishnendu?
Well, you'd say the love for architecture, or said it started a long time back, way before I even knew the word architecture or architect. I was quite fortunate to have one of my friend's father being an architect, and I was quite fascinated from how a single person takes a decision from a small screw or a handle to an entire building, and it's the existence of the building. And I was fortunate enough to see the building get done and finished, and I was like, I remember him actually choosing that little bit of a handle for the door. It was a mosque he was designing. So it turned out quite, that's the point, I think, so where I kind of really realized that, I needed to do something with, and I was very good at art and science and all that, so then we kind of put two and two together. And eventually, I did learn about architecture. We did come forth and get down to Pune, and we did my education out here in Pune. And both my wife and I, we put up this firm called Mu Design. Been at it for over 10 years right after college. So, yes. And I guess, that pace of loving for architecture and its beauty is still there since then, even today.
Wow, seems like a very personal, intimate connect.
Yeah.
So what is your office size? What is your studio size? Like, how many people are there?
So, other than Amita and I, we have we vary between 4 to 6 people. They're all designers, architects themselves, and we do on and off encourage a lot of interns to join in our, the design pattern and all that. So we keep this whole studio tight is because, as me personally, I don't know, I would say that I'm not much of I don't like to handle a lot of people very quickly, so the better the designer, the more I connect with, and I always think that an individual has to be someone who contributes to the table, and they're not just hands, they need to be minds, and every time we try to hire someone, it's about how individual, how different the person is, and what we try to look into how they can bring onto the table. And experience is something that's very novice. You could be a novice, but you could have a lot of ideas and you could have a lot of dreams that you could bring to the table. But you don't know when something clicks.
Wow. So we're talking about the design process almost. So, both of you have a like you have a very large scale setup. It seems like offices across the world, and how many, 160 people working with you, and you are very important part of it at the same time. Whereas you have the entire university, I mean, all the administration, services, marketing, everything seems to be in this little cosmos of 7 people, 8 people with your wife. It's very different experience for the interns or for whoever's joining in. So what is your design philosophy? Do you say that, Arpan, would you align to a certain design philosophy? And within that, how do you find your own expression? That's for you, Arpan. And for you, Krishnendu, if you enter a space, like a person, since this is about space design, if I'm in the humdrum of being in a mall, I'm really puzzled and I'm going in the humdrum, and then I get to enter this beautiful space. How do you ensure that the moment you enter, your context changes, you drop your walls and you become one with the space? Yeah.
Yeah, so starting with design philosophy, it's very simple. You have a client to serve. Basically, you are in the business of, designing a building, a space for a client who's going to use it for a particular function. So the philosophy is straightforward. You have to satisfy the needs as a bottom line. And then going beyond that, as an architect, as a designer, as an urban designer, there are certain social goals that you have. There are certain, characteristics or a picture in your head that this building or this space needs to be looking like that. So you sort of work in the context. You kind of foresee what people will expect for that building to be like or that space to be like, and so we kind of meet those goals, those objectives, and as a bottom line, what the needs of the user are. So there's no soft philosophy here. We try to be very objective, and there are different kinds, different characters of projects we do.
So how strong is the design? Who leads the design?
Yeah, so the way we work is, we have project managers or project architects who kind of is the central point person who talks to the clients, all the stakeholders, and there are design principals who we interact closely with, and they kind of mentor, guide, charrette, the whole process. We also have, when it's a big project, you also do charrettes where everybody come together, spend a couple of hours to thrash out several ideas, and there's a lot of action when a project begins, and then slowly the project architect or the manager kind of takes it till the end.
So you happen to be the project architect or the manager?
Well, both. I have played both roles depending on the scale of the project. There's also management that you have to do. You have to, get the money from the client. You got to get the right team to do the work that you need to do, and all of that. So, and then the communication between so many different parties, stakeholders. So there's a lot of work as a manager, and then a project architect definitely. So you sort of into the building, into the space, and you're dreaming about it and discussing with your colleagues and all of that. So I've played both roles actually.
So in your office, how does the structure look like? I'm sorry, I'm just going further into how he's describing his office structure, which is very exciting to me. How would you explain on a spatial map how it is from top to bottom, or is it hierarchical? Is it vertical? Are there verticals? Like, do you do hospitality and there are separate streams? How is it organized, your office structure?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically very much based on the need of the hour, need of the client, the way the site is. So it will all be, based on that, the situation.
As in, if there are directors, board of directors, then there are. So what does it look like, the structure? There are board of directors, then there are principal architects, then
Yeah.
how does it look like?
So that's why I said there are directors, there are design principals, there are people who do the operations side as well, and then the main chunk of it is project architects and project managers who are dealing with individual projects, and there is also a BD team who kind of goes out there, gets projects, does participate in builds, competitions. So it is all sort of divided into several pockets. They kind of focus on different aspects, but at the end of the day, everybody is an architect pretty much. All the key members of the firm are architects or designers, so they are working on a project at the end of the day.
Got it. Yeah, Krishnendu, your design.
We at our firm believe that an experience of a space is something that's very can change the mentality or keep the person within the space, or you could say keep him interested within the space. So this thing is very important for us, where we say that what is happening in the space has to be very one-to-one with the person and individually. So the thing is, like for example, we definitely say that we kind of attain this by using, we kind of appeal to all the cognitive senses that an individual has. And so one very clear, this can be applied through all the projects. So let it be that if you are doing even in an institution, or if you're doing factories or offices or residences. So this is kind of a system that can be blanketed all and over all these kind of fascias, So even like, for example, if I had to say that we do a lot of spas, a lot of wellness-based, projects. So generally what happens is that we get these kind of shells which are not conducive with the actual product, or you could say what is the experience that the spa is trying to give, right? So we end up with places like in a rundown mall, and they give you a space and say that, so but then why would somebody feel even, they can feel a little intimidated even going to these spaces? Like you have, like they give you a small, like a crawl space, which would be for maybe the service floor of a hotel or something like that. So when it comes to wellness, then the first thing that we do is kind of find a way to to take this person away from who he is being just a second ago. So the moment he enters the space, we do it in such a way that it blows him away. The space kind of enters his perception of how things are, And we do this again by kind of putting one-to-one on where we should have been otherwise. So if I say that I am doing a lot of wellness and spas, so this particular activity would have been great next to a beach, for example, right? So then we say that, okay, the moment you enter, how about it that we kind of make the space look like a beachside village? So we change everything right down to the cognitive, like your feel, your touch, your feel, your sky. So the roof looks like a starry night, and we do a lot of optical illusions, which kind of kill the walls that are existing over there. We remove, we don't do a lot of tiling and stuff like that. We put a lot of marble chips or sand. So you're actually walking through an entire structure, and the moment you enter into this space, you suddenly realize, you've got sand at feet. So, it kind of takes you away from where you are, what you've been doing so far, and puts you in that direct, like even if you're on the phone, you suddenly want to just hang it up, and you suddenly absorb in the silence of the space, listen to the music, right? And then, of course, these kind of spaces come with a lot of refreshments and all that, so that they kind of, go with the whole cognitive understanding where the taste comes into the picture, and
So you engage all the senses, and
Yeah.
you kind of, it's a very wholesome feeling
yes.
and approach.
So, yes.
Whereas in his case, we saw that it's very, it's fragmented, and he's managing within a whole, he's managing a lot of parts, and the whole team is working like a teamwork. How does it look like when it comes to teamwork? You're a husband-wife team, and what part who handles, and what are the challenges you face as a couple?
Couple, not much actually. We're too busy doing our work. We're pretty good at couple.
You got to be very honest. I think your partner's right here, so I can probably ask her on stage.
She'll definitely wet my answer. She'll be okay with
Because
that.
I also am a husband and wife duo.
Right.
So I know.
Yeah, we do have disagreements, but not maybe more than an hour. And
Do you have a divide in work spaces
yeah,
and
we
what
do. We
decisions
do.
she'll take and all?
Right. So unlike his structure of things, since we are a small set of people, and I'd like to think that every designer needs to understand where they are and what they're doing as a whole, So we just don't, we have everybody mandatorily take care of every single aspect of our work. We tell them, deal with the clients, deal with the billing, deal with the management, deal with the office issues, make your own coffee, wash the cup and keep it back. It's as simple as that. From there to, talking to a client, handling a client, they need to understand. They need to realize that, if you don't work, you don't get paid. So that fundamental
Talking about
is kind of
getting paid, how does it work for you? Do clients pay you in time?
Oh no, so I guess that's like a blanketed thing. So I mean, yeah.
How do you ensure that you get installments in time? What are your structures? How do you
we
call
don't.
for fees?
We don't end up. So we do our due diligence. We keep following up. We don't really alienate our clients because of that. Rather it's a very we try to become as friendly as possible to them. So, of course, this kind of a structure for us, since we don't have a management group in place, it becomes a little, little sticky, a situation, you could say, because then at the end of the day, you are asking the same person for, for your fees and your installments, while you are trying to get into his psyche, his understanding, and his requirements. So he kind of gets attached to you as an individual. And suddenly when you say that, when you give him a fees, then he feels a little
So you
taken aback.
basically enroll the client into making sure that they pay up.
Pardon me?
Do you just enroll the client, or is it set up as a structure? Like maybe in his case, it is set up as a structure in your organization that this is part phase 1, phase 2, and that's how the fees has to come in.
So there is always, it's a lot more organized. So you have a contract, there's scheduled payments, sort of meet the milestones, and you sort of bill the client in that fashion. But it's very much close to what he's describing. A project manager, basically doing that one project, and he's dealing with that one client. So he has to do all those duties that are required, right from designing, delivering drawings, and going to the site, as well as kind of getting the bills for the
Even
company.
in your scenario, you don't have a segmentation, as in you have a runner boy, or you have an admin staff asking for payments.
There are staff,
you have a
yes,
design
but
staff. Is it like one person wears the same hats, many hats?
so the staff is different, yes, but as a project manager, project architect, you sort of have to play the same role as if it's your company, and you representing the company to the client, you're serving a client with certain expectations. So it's pretty much similar. You also have a team who's constantly on the project, and you sort of inspire them, and make them also feel important, or as if they are also contributing. Have a lot of informal chats and
So how do you wind down your team? How do you build up the momentum of the team, or what kind of a design? Like it's a design studio, so do you have some innovative exercises to make sure your designers are all
we do.
up to date?
We promote people to sort of reach out to such events, go to all kinds of fairs, trade fairs, exhibitions. Nowadays the internet is so resourceful. You have projects published every day, happening all over the globe. So a lot of material is available to inspire, and we also have a lot of what you call vendor interactions. So people who manufacture certain products, we visit their factories, we understand how why the product has been made, for what particular purpose or use. So all of that kind of combines together, and they keep the team motivated, basically.
Mm-hmm. And any design development exercises you do with the team, is there again, like for both of you, is there a rigor to the day? Do you start with like a design journal? Do you start with maybe on Saturdays do you have a sketch? Just sit out and go out and sketch on the hills or something. Do you have some offbeat activities like that in your studios?
We don't get a whole lot of time to do that, and I kind of think like design offices definitely needs to have their Saturdays and Sundays for themselves. Because like I said earlier, when we hire our people, we are looking for a good designer, someone who's his own human, like own human skill, kind of puts what is required in this case. So one of the reasons what he or she has to come across for them to get is to get the sense of belonging. So for that, we encourage, that we kind of blur the lines between us being a boss and them. And we do have small amount of we sometimes we have a lot of informal discussions even while we are talking, and because of our design philosophy, like whatever we do, we are not actually set to a style or anything. Suddenly we think of something and say, oh, did you see this movie? And did you see this movie? And it's there in that. So we say, okay, let's just start at everything and we'll just go grab a beer. Let's start watch a movie. Let's watch that movie. So kind of brings, so we say, all right, everybody just come along and sit together. We'll just talk about it. And then we have something to talk about and the next time, because then they have something to relate to. So when this kind of sets that sense of belonging on its own, and they're part of the team, is what we like to think of.
Now the bell has rung. I had many more questions, but I think I'm going to ask a very pertinent question, the question of sustainability. And since both of you are working in hospitality, I'll pick up hospitality and say, if, today, like even a place like a desert like Rajasthan, we have to design a hotel there, you would, 50 liters of water per hour is needed by the standards. How do you address, Arpan, in your practice? You're also a Griha consultant. So how do you address issues like that? How do you make sure users are engaged in your projects to be more aware of sustainability issues?
The sustainability is something that has been, picking up a lot of momentum overall in the industry, and we have to make the client understand that you're sort of investing in the future. There might be certain expense that you have to incur right now, but eventually the building has a life cycle. So you're designing for the 50 years or the 80 years that the building is going to be there. And so it is going to be consuming energy, it's going to be consuming resources. So you've got to have to explain to the client that there's a long-term saving we are trying to do. There's a lot of, action, a lot of thinking goes into actually saving resources, saving energy.
So does it actually cost out higher, a sustainable project?
The cost does somehow gets higher, but then there's
By
this
about
payback.
20%?
There's the payback situation here, that you sort of do spend a little bit more, but eventually you kind of save more, and you're helping the environment. You're helping the nature overall.
And what about the client and user end? When you design, how would I perceive as a guest of the hotel to be conscious of how much water I'm using? Do you have some measures for that?
Yeah, so we have to pick the right material. We have to, basically specify things the way they should be, so that everything is energy conscious. All the decisions are basically energy and resource conscious, basically. So it goes into each level of design, be it macro or be it micro.
I'm still going to repeat my question. So you as a designer, now go to the user, not the client. How do you make sure your user is engaged in the idea of sustainability when he enters your hospitality product?
Yeah, most of the times actually the user is also committed. Like for example, we are doing one project where the user only tells us that we need to achieve 5-star rating Griha project. So the user also is very conscious nowadays, and they're keen to save energy, save resources. So it's pretty straightforward these days actually.
Thank you.
Yeah, so in our structures, like if you have a hotel in Rajasthan, for example, the first thing that we generally function around is we use a lot of natural materials, the way that is available, a lot of reuse if it's possible, and we try to bring in processed materials as less as possible, because it's not not easily available. One, and second thing is that we think that sustainability also considers the factor which is called as durability. Something that dilapidates, something that breaks down is not sustainable, because eventually you have to repair it, and it doesn't kind of stick to that whole concept of things, So, and then of course, when it comes to water usage and things like that, and when it comes to the individual of the user being how they are doing their, how do they relate to that particular structure, is there are like every kind of a design, like even if you talk of like for a hospitality industry, everything is set, it's kind of there, and the problem happens when people are not ready to evolve. Now, every design has the scope, although you have designed that in the last time, you have the scope to evolve this time. So you look into it, you don't have to always come to the client and say that, look what I did for you, just do it. Right? If it comes to the fact, the only thing that actually starts pricking him is if there's a cost involved, is when we have to actually go ahead and tell him, you need to spend this kind of money, hence you would save this kind of money, you would look better with these kind of people, that, and eventually hotel industry, hospital industry, laws are getting more and more stringent, luckily. So, these kind of things is something that we keep forward to. When it comes to local understanding of things, how do we go about individual, like during construction, use the local techniques. It gives you a beautiful structure, and also make sure that you can do it cost effectively as well as individually.
Wow. And at this note, I'd like to thank you and thank the audience. And,
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.